yourself into a human I can depend on to bring me happy. Thank you, happy.
You've returned! Trekkies, we're thrilled to have you beam back aboard this Federation starship at warp speed through the stars with the real stars of Trek and its stunt performers. She's the one and only smooth-talking and trekking Lily Fox-Lim.
And he's the boldly going BK, aka Brian Kreutz. And we're both here to guide you through a second part of our interview with Star Trek's record holder for being in the most seen stunts and acting roles that accompany them in Star Trek. That being Tom Morga.
Yes! Last week we filled you in and asked Tom Morga the crucial questions of many familiar stunts and scenes that he's appeared in. Check out part 1 of that episode if you haven't already. Now, Tom is a stuntman, stunt actor, and stunt coordinator, serving with Dennis Madalone on 3 Star Trek series. Wow. And Tom also, he did stunts himself on Star Trek Enterprise in many episodes, aside from numerous Trek films.
Wow, that's a lot of episodes and films within those series for Tom, who's played almost every major species as well.
Yes, and speaking of Star Trek species, Tom's first role we mentioned last week was as Spock's double, a Vulcan, your favorite Trek species, Lils.
Fascinating.
But he also began as a Klingon as well in the same motion picture in 1979. Lily, your love for Klingons and our in-depth interviews with many Klingons on this show is something Tom Morga can speak to as well. Now, how many Klingons do you think Tom has played and or done stunt doubles for, Lily?
Ooh, I mean, well, he stunt doubled J.G. Hertzler so many times. Yes. That's one of my questions actually coming up in the interview with Tom. So I'll say 22.
What? Yes! You're amazing. That's right. 22 times, according to Memory Alpha, our favorite Star Trek encyclopedia source. Now, that's a lot of films and episodes as a Klingon.
It really is. Well, Tom Morga is just incredible. Yeah. Part 2 of our interview is just minutes away, but first, check out this news story, BK. Trek it out. With the recent release of Star Trek Strange New World Season 2, we see a familiar Star Trek classic Klingon look is back. Back in the 1967 original series episode Errand of Mercy, John Colicos, who played Kor, really set the tone for the Klingon species going forward, namely wearing the golden sash that was later worn by Michael Ansara as Kang in Star Trek Original Series Season 3. And then, of course, later by Worf in Next Generation. Now, in Strange New Worlds, we see Spock having drinks with the Klingons, who apparently aren't enemies of the Federation. As the old Klingon proverb says, drink not with thine enemy. One of the Klingons is wearing a golden sash, and both have the familiar silver armor uniforms. But having the familiar cranial ridges that we see should suggest that we get another explanation as to what happened to the Klingons' look. As Worf so humorously stated in Deep Space Nine episode Trials and Tribulations. Remember that, BK?
Yes, I do, Lily. You're referring to Worf's line in that great DS9 episode as a throwback to the Trouble with Tribbles of the original Star Trek series when he states, "Our people do not discuss it with outsiders."
That's a good Worf.
Thank you. Now, referring to the no cranial ridges, Lily, it took all the way until Star Trek Season 4, Episode 15, titled Affliction, to explain the original Star Trek series Klingon look without cranial ridges. Now, this is as a genetic augmentation required for the species to survive a weaponized virus, which in my opinion is perhaps the most elaborate and effective piece of pop culture explanation.
That's brilliant.
Yes, but there has to be a reference or more coming up closer that this prequel series Strange New Worlds gets to Star Trek, the original series, as we bridge the gap with these cranial-less ridged Klingons that we should eventually see like we did in the original series. Now, Tom Morga, by the way, was the very first Klingon ever, alongside Mark Leonard, to be wearing the Klingon cranial ridges, as Morga was the tall and skinny first officer on that Klingon ship in 1979's motion picture. And you mentioned that last week as well.
Yes.
Now, our second part of this amazing interview with Tom Morga is coming up here on A Captain's Log.
A Captain's Log returns in a moment.
Welcome back aboard. I'm Lily Fox-Lim, and this is a captain's log. Tom Morga's importance to the stunt industry and to Star Trek often brought integral parts of action and aliens together to perform difficult physical feats that could at times be considered out of this world and unimaginable. Maintaining safety and choreographed technique is of paramount importance on the Paramount sound stages for the Star Trek series, because a single misstep or lack of precaution can lead to severe injuries, costly delays, or, in Tom Morga's case, careful choreographed sword and batleth injuries if not carefully practiced.
Now, this is at Woodley Park in Van Nuys, California for rehearsal, right next to the Japanese garden. And they're rehearsing well in advance of shooting a crucial batleth scene for the episode Blood Oath. Now, let's show you the result of this hard practice scene in its final version for the Deep Space Nine episode.
Now, as the planning and rehearsal moves from the park to the actual Paramount soundstage, where Tom Morga and Cece put themselves into a last set of on-set rehearsals, was truly a key to their success.
Let's welcome back Tom Morga.
We've just shown some bits of your rehearsal at Woodley Park in Van Nuys, California, with Karen Colbert, Cece, choreographing and practicing a one-on-one batleth fight as she doubled for Dax and you for Koloth. Can you please share your memories of this?
I would usually, like I said before, I'd get a fight together. I'd do most of the choreography for it, and then I'd bring in the actor, stunt person, whoever's going to do it, and we'd practice usually some parts like Woodley Park. It was a location that we could all get to. And we spent an hour or two up there doing the moves and making the blade work. And then we bring it back to the studio and usually show Dennis, videotape it. And then we make some changes, whatever it was, and show it one more time, shoot it one more time and take it to the director. And Dennis would usually come back. And most of the time he says, yeah, he likes it like it is. Don't change anything. So that's the way we did that. And those are some behind the scenes. I was obviously recording what we were practicing because we were practicing and we need to see what we did. And I just happened to keep those videotapes. So that's why we have them.
This is visually intriguing to follow many of the choreographed batleth moves in your rehearsal outside at Woodley Park. They're so familiar from the Deep Space Nine episode.
They are. And Tom, speaking of Blood Oath, part of the popular Deep Space Nine episode was shot on location in Pasadena near Hollywood at the historic Millard house designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. In this episode, you stunt doubled for Bill Campbell, who reprised his role as Koloth, the Klingon. Tell us about this on-location experience and the preceding Dax confrontation with Koloth in a holosuite with your batleth techniques.
Well, that was where Koloth was practicing. He was like going through staging some moves and stuff. Dax comes in, he ignores her for a moment, does a couple Molinets, comes back and almost hits her with a batleth with the points in her face. And of course, she's very stoic. She says, thanks for stopping. Now I want to go with you guys. And then they had their little discussion about whether she should be included or not. So that was kind of neat. And I thought the lighting on him looked great. I showed him these moves and I thought he did a good job. It looked good. That set was the cave set or the cliff sets that we've used on Stage 18 for various episodes like Battle Lines. That's what's shot there.
A very familiar look, especially when his batleth is thwarted to stop inches from Dax's face to show Koloth's powerful weapon-wielding batleth prowess.
Yes, unforgettable. Koloth certainly wasn't Kahless the Unforgettable, but his and Dax's batleth scenes are now even more special now that we've seen this rehearsal footage and know Tom's story behind it. Now, speaking of Klingons, you stunt doubled for the great J.G. Hertzler as General Martok 4 times, starting in 1996 on the Deep Space Nine episode Apocalypse Rising. What were the Klingon fight sequences and stunts like as Martok?
He was a good character because he liked to fight. He was a tough Klingon. And he had some battle injuries. In fact, one of his eyes was, he had lost an eye, so he could only see out of one eye, and he had scar across his eye that was bad, and they made it up so that he couldn't see out of it. And so when I would double him, I'd have the same makeup kind of thing, only I didn't have the piece that went over my eye. I had a little bit of makeup that went on my eyelid and a little piece below. So when I was facing camera, I could close my eye and it appeared as though I had this big scar across my eye and I couldn't see out of it, which was an advantage for me because when you're doing all these fights, you need your 3D, you need two eyes to help do it. So when I would be away from camera, I'd open my eyes and I'd continue the fight. And when I turned towards camera, I'd close my eye. So it helped me do the fights. And he didn't get that advantage. But he was a great guy. I liked JG to work with.
A true testament to your dedication as a Klingon to double JG's Martok so many times, Tom.
Production of the 2002 film Star Trek Nemesis needed thin people to portray the Remans. The costume you wore was later slightly modified and used for the Xindi in Star Trek Enterprise, coordinated by Vince Diedrich Jr. Tom, you received a call to portray such a Xindi because of your name tag in the costume?
They needed slim guys or whatever it was to do the Remans. And when I went in to do that, of course, they had a costume made. And evidently I heard that, they saw my name in the costume. So when they're looking for a Xindi, they said, well, this one will work for Tom, so call him. So I did. I came in and I got to do that. And you can see that's they put those metal bands and the other things they put on the Xindi to make them look different. But I thought it looked pretty cool. I thought the Xindi was a great looking alien.
It's a good thing your name was left in the costume. I mean, future work is always good. And to play a Xindi on Enterprise is quite the honor.
Yes, it is. Now, the 1997 Deep Space Nine episode from Season 5 titled Impact Nor has O'Brien and a team on a runabout that arrive at an abandoned Cardassian space station that looks identical to Deep Space Nine. They're scavenging for equipment. O'Brien's team discovers that the station may not be completely abandoned. Now, this is where you're a Cardassian soldier alongside fellow stuntman Chris Doyle, also a Cardassian, left in stasis inside a stasis tube, and later you have a phase disruptor rifle aiming it at the crew. Can you tell us about your memories of being on this episode?
That was kind of fun because we were like, the safety cameras. They had us in these stasis, and if anything came to Impact Nor, then we would wake up and go ahead and take care of them. And we did. We had a couple little fights and stuff. And Chris and I, we have a picture of us together. You can see us standing there as the Cardassians. And we had a good time on that. I know I did a couple of chills. And one time I stepped on a guy's neck. Leslie was with us that day. And she says, I like that thing. That was good. So sometimes you have a lot of fun doing your little gags and putting a little bit of extra something into it.
A captain's log returns in a moment.
Whether you're docked at Deep Space Nine or flying at Warp Factor 9, Bryan and I have you covered on those burning questions you've always wanted to know with our guests here on A Captain's Log. Let's get back to talking with our guest for today, Tom Morga.
Tom, in the second season Deep Space Nine episode Armageddon Game, you and Chris Doyle played the Kell Run soldiers. You in particular executed the Kell Run and Talani scientist. Now, this costume was interesting. It looked similar to a Romulan uniform. Mm-hmm. However, what I want to point out is the hairstyle in this episode and the fact that it was nominated for an Emmy Award for Outstanding Individual Achievement in Hairstyling for a series. Now, that has to feel good for you to be a part of an award.
I had no idea. And of course, that hairstyle was big, tall piece of hair or whatever it was they had on me. I had to deal with it a little bit, but I was glad for the hair people. I had, I was just the head block for their, for their award.
I'm sure Michael Westmore and his team, plus the hairstylist, were very pleased you helped bring this character to life as well. That's a cool story, Tom.
Super cool. And oftentimes you associate a stunt person to a character as a trained professional who performs daring acts, but their confidence in part makes up the whole portrayal of the being's life force. So Tom, you deserve a big part of that award for sure.
Absolutely. Now, Tom, you played really two roles in the Star Trek The Next Generation 7th season episode titled Firstborn. One as a Klingon assassin where you attack Worf with a jagged knife, then as Kahless in a ritualistic battle. This was in a reenactment called Baval Festival. Can you please tell us about this experience as one of the last Next Generation episodes in both roles? And also, if you can, please touch upon the John Shull as Molar character.
Actually, on that episode, I remember I was going to be a double for Shoal, and he was going to play Molar, who was the tyrant that Kahless had defeated that made him so important, because Kahless brought together all the Klingons, and he was the first emperor, supposedly. And so he was like their god, you know, and he was, everybody talked about Kahless as this great guy from the past. Anyway, I was going to double him, except he was pretty handy, and we were putting the fight together, and they needed Kahless, and I can't remember just what the incident was, but they said, well, I want you just do Kahless. So I went ahead, and now I'm Kahless. And I don't even think the IMDb or Memory Alpha or places that have information about it have it right. They had me as double for Molar or something else, but we should make a correction. That I was actually the character Kahless, and I had this crown, and the bat'leth I had the little bells on it, and I came out and we did this ritualistic fight. And then when I was the assassin, of course, there were three of us there that were attacking Worf, and he took us out. But that was fun too.
That's fascinating to hear this, that your name on the call sheet is for a double, and then instead you get to reenact the greatest Klingon warrior ever in Kahless, wearing his crown and having that custom bat'leth with bells on it.
That's awesome.
What a dream.
Right.
Now, Tom, with all the stunt work that you've been involved with, I have to believe that there have been a time or two where a missed mark or a hand-to-hand combat scene resulted in an accidental injury to either yourself or one of the principal actors or other stunt actors. And I understand that there's credits that you and Dennis both played holographic skull fighters in the holosuite. And I understand that the skull character may have been that case where Dennis took a hit in the eye in the fight scene with Michael Dorn, and we understand there might have been an incident there.
As stunt guys are sort of like professional athletes, and that's why they have stunt guys, because there's a certain hazard, and there are times when you do get hurt. And I know that Dennis, on a show previous to this, a different show, he had been doing a breakaway glass, and he got a little shard or something in his eye, so it did hurt him, and he was conscious of this possibility for eye injuries. And when he was doing the Skelator, he just got nicked in the eye a little bit, and he was concerned that, you know, he wanted to be sure that he wasn't in trouble with this. So he said, Tom, why don't you just take the last half of Skelator? And so I did the other side for him, and I'm not even sure how much I did with Worf, but it'd be hard to remember exactly what parts we did, but I did that last part of the fight for Dennis, and he went ahead and his eye checked out. But things happen once in a while. I know we all have had some injuries. Fortunately, it's been very rare that we had any injuries on Star Trek, because we were pretty careful. Dennis was exceptionally concerned about everybody going home safe, you know. So we had very few times where there's any. I don't think we really had a real serious injury. You had a couple of dings, but you got to. I mean, you're going to get a bruise or something once in a while.
You were a Klingon warrior twice in this episode. On the promenade, you stunned a Bajoran deputy played by George Colucci with a Klingon disruptor weapon, and then later your Klingon character is killed when you try to invade Ops, and you're killed by Cisco. Can you tell us about this episode, The Way of the Warrior?
Way of the Warrior was a big deal. They were bringing Klingons in, and we're going to have a big battle, and we had different scenes going right to left to right, fighting here, fighting there. And we all had a chance to do falls and fights, and it was a lot of fun that day. I think, as I recall, there might have been a shot where I actually killed myself. We were shooting one direction, and then I'm the Klingon over here, and I get shot, and they put those two shots together. You're going to do this part, and then you're going to be this guy or something like that, and then when they edit together, the guy who's shooting is shooting the guy you were when you were the other guy.
Tom, talk about about the swarm alien as a major alien for you in a Voyager season that was proposed? Now, we can't see his eyes, but I understand there was a character for the entire season arc. However, the makeup covered everything except his eyes, and you can't make any type of expressions or show any facial movements. Apparently, producers scrapped this character after just one episode. Can you tell us about this?
The way I understood it, they created this alien called the Swarm, and I think there's a photo there. You have it. You could show that's in makeup. Actually, I'm in the wardrobe room with the wardrobe mistress, and she's been putting the suit together, and I'm standing there with her, and the head part hasn't been painted yet. But then there's another one, of course, where it's complete. You'll notice that the Swarm character has this tube thing that comes from his mouth down to his chest or something, and it was all glued together. For lunch, we had to cut that loose and then eat and then put it back on. So the Swarm character, all he could do is look at you. I mean, he might be surprised and look like that, or he might be scared and look like that. So all he had was his eyes for an expression. So I think that they realized right away that, this is not going to play for a whole season, because how are you going to make him do anything? I think that when they put Star Trek together, they originally said that whatever aliens we have, they're going to have a face so they can make expressions so our audience will know what they're doing and thinking. And it didn't work out with the Swarm, but it was quite an outfit to put on. And I think I was killed on the one time in that first scene, and then that's about all they did with the Swarm. They realized that he can't exactly be an actor. And we need someone who can talk and look, et cetera, et cetera. So it was kind of after the fact we discovered, and everybody looked at each other and said, oh, you're right. Should have thought of that when you first did it, right?
Tom, you played as a Klingon Alliance officer in the Great Deep Space Nine Mirror Universe episode titled The Emperor's New Cloak. Now, Tom, LeVar asked you to do a specific stunt in a scene with Nana Visitor to fall back flat onto your back into the intendant Kira Nerys. In the scene in that episode, we see you fall flat on your back. Can you explain that fall?
In that shot, LeVar wanted this Klingon just fall flat back and hit the ground. And he says, I'd literally look good. Can we get that done somehow? And I'd really like to see him hit the ground. I wouldn't like him to go out of frame so he can hit a pad or something. And I said, well, let me, I think Dennis was there. And I said, well, let me just use we had what we call a gator back. And it's a back pad, but it has plastic pieces on it. And I think it comes from motorcycles. You can buy them if you're a motorcycle rider, and it gives you a plastic pieces that go down your back, so you can flex it. And anyway, we use those sometimes because if you want to hit the ground straight back, it protects your back. So I was able to put a couple of extra pads on, and I just went straight flat to the ground, bam, and it worked out. And I think LeVar was pleased, and I was happy, and everybody thought that was good. We might have done 2 takes. I can't remember for sure, but it was no problem. I think after we shot the first take, I said, well, if you need another one, I can give it to you. And he said, I think we got it.
Now, Tom, you did a fight choreography sequence right before taping in front of director Jesús Salvador Treviño to show him the action with blocking and the Klingon pain sticks. Now, you're in the scene opposite Leslie Hoffman, doubling for Torres in the Voyager episode titled Day of Honor. Can you tell us about this story?
Well, Leslie, she was a good stunt girl, and she doubled for B'Elanna. And she had this sequence for her where she's supposed to be tested, and they're going to use pain sticks. Well, that was pretty painful. So in the episode, B'Elanna's supposed to say, no, don't do that, and grab the Klingons and beat them up. Well, I was going to be the Klingon she worked on. So we had a couple moves and a little choreographed fight that we had worked out. We had put some pads out next to the set where we were working, and we had, after a half hour or so, we had this fight kind of worked out. So we were ready to show the director, and he just happened to come in that door at that place when we were ready to show him. So we just asked him if he could step over here for a minute and take a look at what we had arranged for this fight to see how he'd like it. And so she took off on me and really let me have it. And I hit the ground real hard a couple times, and he says, good, fine, we'll use it.
Oh, I love that story, and B'Elanna Torres deserved to have that honorable day with the pain sticks. It's so cool to see her embrace her Klingon side. Tom, there's a very distinct levitating scene Dan Curry helped imagine from a visual effects perspective in Next Generation episode Schisms, with Riker seemingly levitating and dreaming that you did stunts for. Can you talk about that experience?
That was a situation where he was going to be abducted by aliens because they were taking, and they were doing alien operations, etc. So he had set himself up so he could be taken from that, and he had to be levitated off his bed, and he was actually teleported through this wall. To get that shot, they set up Dan Curry, who's the effects coordinator for that particular show. He did a lot of great things in Star Trek. He got me up in the stage, and we have, which is the green beds, which are levels are pretty high up in the stage, and he had the camera set up on sideways, so it would look sideways towards the wherever I was falling, and I would fall through frame. And he cranked the thing up to about 120 frames, so it was slow motion, and I would have to step off the place I was standing on and fall quite a ways, but I had to stay nice and straight so they could use that in slow motion to look like he was turning the camera and would be levitating. So we did a few takes of that, and it worked out pretty good. We had a really neat way of setting up the pad, because you can imagine if you're falling into a pad and you hit it like this, it isn't going to be as comfortable as if it were like this. So we would take 2 big flats of cardboard, the boxes that we would use, and leave them flat. And when you put cardboard on cardboard, it's so slippery as you can imagine. It's almost like ice. So all I had to do is fall straight like this and just barely tip my feet. And as soon as I hit that first piece of cardboard, it just slide right out. So that's the way we made up, so we have a good catcher for that whole action. And that way I could stay nice and straight all the way down.
That's amazing. I always wondered how that effect shot and stunt went with it. I'm always thinking, are you kidding me? How did you guys do that with Riker?
Just some astonishing stunt work and visual effects of Hollywood, right?
Yes.
Okay. Tom Morga, it has been a fascinating half hour with you, and well worth the time with your masterpieces of stories. I know Bryan and I will treasure this and remember it. Thank you for being with us here on A Captain's Log.
When you do films, it's and you're on a series, you're like a family, and you're together every day, you're working all the time, and then all of a sudden the whole thing's over with and you all disappear. You're all gone somewhere else. So it's kind of like, you're scattered.
Well, this is only the beginning of our fascinating insight from stunt performers here on A Captain's Log this season. We have Leslie Hoffman coming up in a few weeks with an interview here with Lili and I. Then, in a few more weeks, we have our season finale full of our Stuntman season finale spectacular. There's going to be multiple reunions in that one. You won't want to miss that. Next week, join Lili and I for our interview with the superb Star Trek author Greg Cox. You won't want to miss that, Trekkies.
Oh yeah, there's more in store from Trek lore this season on A Captain's Log. Please remote record or watch us on your local TV stations or Roku channel, and on our YouTube channel at A Captain's Log Show.
Yes, 3 ways to enjoy these amazing interviews and Lili's point of views.
And yours, BK.
Thanks. Love the show. Bye for now.
Hello, happy, my old friend. I'm glad you've manifested yourself into a human I can depend on to bring me happy.